Hello and welcome to Off With Their Headlines. I am here with the beautiful, the luminous, the overworked Amanda Matta.
Overworked and underpaid because I'm self-employed.
Yes, and I'm Meredith Constant, in case you forgot, in case you wanted to forget. And we are back with another fun-filled episode. Remember, if you want to listen early, ad-free, you want the videos the same week they come out, you want bonus episodes, those are over on our Patreon. The link is in our show notes. And if you would like the videos, but you don't want to pay, we get it. In this economy, you can watch them 1 week later over on YouTube. And don't forget, if you like us, you like us. They really like us. Feel free to leave a review over on Apple. It helps us reach more people, new people, and we might read a review on here if it's nice.
If it's nice.
We like words of affirmation are my love language.
I tell people all the time, I'm a hoe for feedback, whether that is like from an employer or a podcast review. So
I'm a hoe for feedback might need to be our first merch.
That's like my life motto.
I'm a hoe for feedback.
Yeah.
That might be our first, some merch. We'll put that on the back burner.
Yeah, we'll put our heads together.
We'll talk offline. So anyway, let's talk about our weekends. Amanda, you had a much busier weekend than I did. What was up? What were you doing?
If you didn't know, I moonlight in my real life at an independent bookstore near me. I would say it's my part-time job, but honestly, I haven't gotten a raise in 2 years and inflation is happening. So basically
it's a labor of love.
Basically, it's my community service at this point is how I look at it. But this weekend, we welcomed author Frederick Bachman to Pennsylvania, which was a huge get. We had like 1,200 people at an event. So I was with him on Saturday from 2 p.m. until midnight. We record on Mondays, so I'm still catching up on sleep, but it was fun. It was fun, I will say. It was a lot also. But because Frederick Bachman is Swedish, I wanted to talk about it a little bit because, we had time because he needed to sign 1,200 books. We had time to discuss life. All of a sudden, we were talking about how I talk about the royals online. So,
of course. It all leads back to the royal family.
Always. But because he's Swedish, luckily he offered this up for free. I didn't have to poke about it. He was talking about his own royal family, the Swedish royals. So Crown Princess Victoria. And it's always so fascinating to me to talk to locals about their own royals and see what's up there. And he was saying everyone loves Crown Princess Victoria. And in his mind, he thinks that the Swedish royal family, I guess, wouldn't be around anymore if she wasn't the one who was the heir. He said if it was her brother or her sister that was in that job, I feel like we would have let them go by now. But everyone loves her specifically.
No pressure.
And I would have pushed back if we were actually having a debate. But I, again, need to stress, I needed him to sign 1,200 books. So I didn't want to derail the conversation. I feel like anybody put into a crown prince or princess role is going to rise to the occasion. And if you know you're a spare, you're going to act like a spare. I feel like there's some self-fulfilling prophecy there. So I disagree, Frederick Bachman.
I imagine Frederick Bachman is listening to this right now. He's like, oh, that nice girl. He's like throwing his phone against the wall.
No, he's not.
I'm just kidding.
No, he's not. But yeah, and I also told him, if you've ever seen a picture of Crown Princess Victoria's husband, Prince Daniel, who used to be her personal trainer, I mentioned to Frederick, I was like, you kind of look like him. And he said, no, he just looks like every Swedish person. And he said, just look at Swedish men. They can be blonde versions of Prince Daniel like I am. They can be brunette versions of Prince Daniel, but we all just look like that. And I said, oh, okay, noted. So that is one thing that I learned.
Well, we learned something new. I love that you managed to get royal reporting into anything. You're like, oh, you're from another country that has a royal family. Let's discuss.
Yes, absolutely. He did give me some writing advice, which was just do it. So thank you, Frederick, for that.
It's so hard to take that advice, but it's so true.
He's like, you just need to sit down and do it. And I was like, yeah, I know.
It's so hard.
His biggest piece of advice was don't let there be any blank pages in your outline. Like wherever you know that something is going to start, whether it's a chapter or a section, just write something. Just write something and come back to it later.
That's good advice.
That was good
Frederick.
advice. Yes,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was my weekend. Meredith, how was your weekend? You got to stay home, I think.
I was at home. Yes, I had all the children this weekend, which meant lots of swim lessons and park time and all the stuff. Lots of momming and lots of
pre-summer activities.
Yeah. We're almost done. We're almost there, which just means chaos, because there's summer schedules and all of that. But we also, unfortunately, received some not so great news that former President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has also spread to his bones. And obviously, first off, like my thoughts are with his family. This is a family that has gone through a lot. Joe Biden lost his wife and his daughter in a horrific car accident when he was just I think he was senator at the time, being sworn in after all of that, meets Jill and they get married and they have a daughter. And then he loses his son, Beau. And he's obviously had struggles with his son, Hunter. So it's been a lot. It's a lot.
And this is a family who, say what you want about the Bidens on the political scene, but in real life, they live in Delaware. My great aunt lived very, very close to them. She actually drove me past their house one time and she said, you can tell when he's here because there's Secret Service everywhere. And I said, thank you. That is good insight. But by all accounts, in Delaware where they live, they're just a normal family. Joe Biden used to take the train to D.C. Dr. Jill Biden is just kind of a wife and mother and mom and Educator, of course. It's so tragic to hear this news about anyone, let alone somebody who, I don't know, for better or for worse, I think Joe Biden did the best he could with the career he had. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. Prostate cancer is horrific. Metastatic cancer is horrific. The one silver lining we heard from his doctor in the official statement was that it seems to be a type of cancer that will be receptive to treatment. So hopefully some of his symptoms can be alleviated.
And then hopefully part of me is like, man, I just really wish you had it run again so that you could have had more time to just relax and enjoy your family and enjoy, whatever time you have left, because he was, up there in age. And I thought about a couple of things when this came out, besides obviously feeling terrible for his family.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about how we learned a ton of information about what he has in comparison to King Charles when we found out he had a prostate procedure, which did help. In terms of, we saw Google searches were up for men looking into getting checked and stuff like that. But we still don't know what Charles has, how long he's had cancer. And I do wonder, though, if Joe Biden received this news when he was in office, how much would we know? Would we know as much? Do we only know as much because he's no longer president? Although I don't know legally if you technically can do that. But again, Woodrow Wilson was basically like comatose for some of his presidency and his wife was running the show. So
there's a great podcast called Edith about that. Rosamund Pike is like playing Edith Wilson. It's kind of one of those podcasts where it's almost like a radio play.
Yeah.
It's like a couple parts, 6 or 7 parts. That's a good one.
Well, that does sound good.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that and how much information we know about Joe Biden. And the other thing I was thinking about is Joe Biden's been in the news recently because he's been on a PR blitz, because there is a book coming out by Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper called Original Sin. And it is a very talked about book. There are people that are incredibly angry about it, feeling like it's not the time to discuss this because look at the maniac we have in office. There are people that feel like, no, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about what people around Joe Biden did or did not know about how he was faring and let him continue to run. My impression of this book, from what I've heard, it has more to do with mental deterioration than
physical.
Hiding anything physically.
I did hear a tidbit of this book, though, discusses how aides were concerned that Joe Biden might need to be in a wheelchair for the bulk of his second term. So I don't know if, again, that's because of mental or physical declining. In my impression of this book, I think it's sort of the done thing that once a president is out of office, these types of books come out. We did see this after Trump's presidency, Obama, Bush, you can go back. The timing of it, though, with the news cycle still being where it is, I was wondering this before I heard the news about Joe Biden and the cancer diagnosis. I was seeing all these talking heads on the news last week about Joe Biden and the Democrats, and I'm just like, to your point, I don't think it is necessarily useful unless we're actually committed to reforming, say, the Democratic Party and how they run candidates.
Just thinking that. Because I think the bigger thing here, to your point, is that there is a real issue in the Democratic Party about generational change.
Mm-hmm.
We do have too many over 70-year-old people who have served. Thank you. Please go now. And that is a real issue that we are seeing playing out in this call. Amanda Littman, who runs the organization Run for Something that helps train new candidates to run for office up and down the ballot, has talked about this a lot too, that there is a big issue here. So the people that are saying we shouldn't talk about this because we don't want to give Republicans ammo, well, the ammo is there, but also Trump is also old. So there is
Right.
work we have to do here.
I think
You know what I
across the
mean?
board, term limits are like the least we could do. And
Truly.
I don't necessarily think that shutting down conversation because it's a Democrat is helpful in these
No, I agree.
situations, because the Republicans, the MAGA Republicans especially, are just going to be horrible regardless. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I look at the Democratic Party and I think, are you a registered Democrat, Meredith?
I sure am.
I don't know how it is in Colorado, but here in Pennsylvania, you have to be registered Democrat or Republican to vote in the primaries.
Yeah.
Some very close family members of mine who are Catholic and lifelong conservatives recently told me they switched their party affiliation to the Democratic side. And I said,
okay, here we
welcome.
go.
We have our own problems, but welcome. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
This is wonderful to hear.
And I think it does behoove Democrats to really take that issue seriously, because there are people that feel like, I don't know why I would go with the Democrats. Like they don't seem great either. And it seems like they have their own issues with age. And I think that's an important conversation. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. There's something about this book now that we know that Joe Biden has cancer. It feels tacky in a way that maybe it wouldn't have felt.
And
what do you think?
I wondered when you were talking on your Instagram about the book in relation to the cancer statement, is the statement almost damage control, or kind of something we saw with the British royals with Kate's cancer announcement, a way to say, shame on you. Don't you feel horrible? Don't you feel like a terrible person?
Don't you kind of wonder if they were waiting?
Because the statement is very detailed. And you were saying earlier, it's giving a lot of detail. It's very open, which we might not have gotten in a different world where this book wasn't coming out.
Yeah, I think I'm very interested in the timing of this statement and what they knew when.
Right.
And because now it's dropped, think about it. So you drop this over the weekend. You know, Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson are going to be on all the shows today.
The morning shows.
The book drops Tuesday. So all this week, they are going to be asked about Biden's announcement that I am telling you, over the weekend, they were in hours and hours and hours of meetings with all their marketing people and PR, just trying to figure out, how do we reframe this so we don't look like terrible, and that there's still an appetite for this book. Because I think there are some people that feel like, I don't want to do this right now. Like, you know what I mean?
Like, ooh, now, icky. Yeah. Me and Shane are also rewatching Veep. This is a great time to rewatch Veep if you haven't, or if you haven't seen it yet.
I've never watched it.
Go watch it
I know,
now, Meredith.
I'm always so behind.
There was one episode we were just watching. We're in season 2, and there's one episode where they're trying to negotiate a hostage situation. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus, one of her aides, says to her, I changed considered response to robust response. And there's so much conversation in this episode about just that one word, robust. And we have to align our messaging with the Secretary of Defense. It's just so fun.
That does sound like something we need.
And political people, aides and journalists and whatnot have always said Veep is the most accurate political show that you can watch. So when I hear scenes like that, robust, I'm just thinking like, yeah,
it's exactly that. It's
how
exactly
the sausage gets made. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. And I'm also wondering too, is if they saw he was on The View with Jill last week. And a lot of people took issue with him saying, well, if I had run again, I would have won. And your VP was in an impossible situation. There was a lot of people that felt like, dude, it doesn't seem like you learned your lesson.
Yeah.
This isn't working.
But also,
I'm very interested.
Do we need this guy to learn his lesson? Because he is, for all intents and purposes, done in politics, but he will probably go on to endorse folks. And
I think I forget where I heard this, but I agree with it. I think he is trying to save his legacy too early. I think we are going to see later on that, yes, there were a lot of bad decisions that were made and deadly decisions made, especially in terms of Gaza, right? Can't ignore that. But I think we are also seeing the things that he was doing to rebuild America, American jobs, all of these other things that Trump then destroyed. Like, I do think that history might be kind to him on that area.
Just by comparison,
it's like no one liked Harry Truman at the time, and then later on, it's kind of like you need time from your presidency. You need decades, and you can't try to rewrite your story or defend it, not even a year out of office.
He needs to do Harry and Meghan, just go away for 2 years. Then you can come back and do the interviews, write the book.
Can get back on Instagram. Can you see Joe Biden in an
with a
all
shop
white?
my.
He's running on Rehoboth Beach. And he's like drawing 2026 in the sand with his finger. That would be iconic.
Well, I am not a political commentator, so that's enough of that. Thank you for that update, Meredith.
I am all in politics. So
yeah, whenever we can, sure, let's do it. But that's enough is what I'm trying to. No, I'm just kidding.
Get off stage.
But let's talk about some royals because there's some stuff going on.
Pope watch.
We're just watching him be Pope now, which I love.
He's poping everywhere.
Pope Leo XIV had his inaugural mass this weekend, which is going to mark the official start of his papacy. He hopped in that Pope mobile. He got the Pope's ring put on his finger, and he did not wear red shoes, although there were some red socks in place. So maybe, what if I told you the red shoes might be coming?
What if I told you that maybe he's not a White Sox fan, he's a Red Sox fan?
Ooh, I'm a Red Sox fan.
Me too.
In terms of fashion.
Yes, I have to quickly give a shout out to Whitney, who follows us on Instagram, because she was on the beat.
Mm-hmm.
She messaged us and said, I have a sighting of Pope Leo's shoes. They appear to be slightly scuffed and worn, but they're black shoes. And she was like, she got angles. I was like, yes, Whitney. We love you guys.
Yeah. Keep them coming.
Whitney. Thank
you,
Whitney.
I can say. I was looking for every single angle during his inaugural mass to see if they had made a debut. Not yet is all I can say. But we did spot several royals and other heads of state at this inaugural mass at the Vatican on Sunday. That's when you have mass. So Catholic monarchies like Spain and Belgium, as well as the Principality of Monaco, sent their heads of state. So we saw Queen Letizia and King Felipe of Spain looking so good.
She looked like a snack. She looked like a vision in white. That veil.
Yes.
Any opportunity to wear a veil. A lot of people were saying, you don't wear white on someone else's wedding day. But I don't think that works here. Why do some people get to wear white?
Yes, there were a few Catholic queens. 3, I believe, were in attendance on Sunday who got to wear white. And this is a really cool royal fashion protocol thing. It's called the privilege of white, or the privilège du blanc in French, which I don't know why it's like specifically named in French, but
because it sounds better,
I guess. There are 7 Catholic monarchies around the world where the head of state or their wife is allowed to wear white in the presence of the Pope. And so those include Spain, Monaco, and Belgium. So we got to see 3 royal ladies exercising that privilege at this mass. It's something to do with the monarchy being connected to the Vatican and like being on good terms with them. So it has to be a Catholic monarchy. It's not enough just for the head of state to be Catholic. Queen Maxima is Catholic. I believe she never switched over to Dutch Protestantism when she married King Willem-Alexander. But because the monarchy of the Netherlands, or like the predominant religion in the Netherlands, is Protestant, she is not allowed to wear white. So it's just like a very interesting minutia
Henry
of royal
VIII
fashion.
really screwed up. He was not thinking
this
through.
Let's talk about the British. So we'll bring it back to King Henry VIII because there is so many layers of irony that we could get into here. So yes, the British did send Prince Edward, who, because he's a man, he doesn't get to do the privilege of wearing white. So he was there in like a navy suit. No, it was black, a black suit. And he had this like Panama hat on.
My man was looking fresh to death. He understands that like Southern Italy is kind of what we're doing this season.
Yeah.
And he is leaning into it.
He's in summer mode. A few days before he was sent to the Vatican, he was also at the Windsor Horse Show with Duchess Sophie. So he is serving up aristocratic realness. They
reprogrammed Eddie. They said, no more talking to tortoises, no more feminism. Get your Panama boater hat on and get to the Vatican.
Yeah. So that's a 3rd string royal being sent to essentially the coronation of a new head of state. You know, if we talk about the Pope as the head of Vatican
What's up with
City.
that? Like, what was Charlie doing? What was William doing?
I did some digging because there were some headlines this weekend why Prince William is skipping Pope Leo's coronation, sending royal stand-in instead. That's from Cosmopolitan. It's not a surprise. William and Charles do tend to skip international events. Much has been said about the British royal family thinking they're above kind of the rest of Europe. That's not necessarily what's going on here, although maybe that's the conclusion we can extrapolate from what I'm about to tell you. When it comes to the Vatican specifically, King Charles, the monarch, whoever they are, will skip these official events because they are the head of the Church of England. There's no world in which the head of the Church of England is going to put themselves in a room with the Pope when the Pope is being celebrated, because they will be expected to give deference and maybe even bow to the Pope. That's why King Charles would have skipped. Now, Prince William is another matter. There is some precedent for a third string royal being sent to a Vatican event. In 2013, when Pope Francis was inaugurated, the Queen sent the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. And in 2005, when Pope Benedict XVI was inaugurated, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, attended instead of the Queen. So
that's a little higher up there.
A little higher up, but still a third string royal when you think about monarch
that's fair.
and then heir. Charles skipping Pope Francis's funeral, Charles and William both skipping Pope Leo's inauguration. It's not unprecedented, but I would push back and say, Prince William, if you want to be a global statesman, you have to do the global statesman events, okay? None of this, oh, well, he's the future head of the Church of England. No, if you want credit for being a modern global statesman, I want to see some modernizing of these expectations, because there is also an expectation that, the monarch doesn't attend funerals because it's treason to think of the monarch's death. And if the monarch attends a funeral, then people will be thinking of their own funeral. That's a real thing. William, I think we could push back on that one too.
Yeah, my dude. I also was thinking about this in the context of some research that I was doing into the way William has telegraphed what his reign will be like and how it's being covered, and especially this deep dive that came from the Times that I'm not going to go into right now, but except to say that it was very much like he's a chill, more at home in the football stadium than he is in all of his regalia.
Did you know that
a small R, a small R royal? Well, I think going to this event and you're just so chill, you can go to this.
And William was indeed in a football stadium on Saturday. The FA Cup final, the men's, of course, not the women's, come on, were on Saturday. So William was attending that. And I just think, again, if you want the credit for being a global statesman, let's step it up a little. Let's renegotiate some of this stuff. That would be really cool and sexy in like an institutional way, not a Prince William directly way. But yes, to your point, you brought in Henry VIII. And I will say it again. We can't pick and choose Church of England when we are above the Vatican and when we want to keep things that come directly from Catholicism, namely the Defender of the Faith title.
Amanda, this is Amanda's hill. This right here is Amanda's hill.
Which I did a little bit more research just to refresh, just to make sure I had my facts straight. Do you know why Henry VIII got the Defender of the Faith title from the Pope?
It's got to do something. What is it? Land, money? What are we talking about?
Henry wrote a dissertation on the sacrament of marriage. And the Pope rewarded him.
I forgot about that.
With the title Defender of the Faith. Because you did such a good job defending the sanctity of the institution of marriage, Henry VIII. This is, of course, while he's still married to Catherine of Aragon. Catherine of Aragon also used the Defender of the Faith title. I think that should have died with her because she was the last one to really stand up for the Catholic Church in the English monarchy. But again, we keep that title, but we're saying, yeah, but the head of the Church of England can't possibly be at an event where the Pope is going to be higher up. It's just what are we doing?
Yeah, and
we're being quite choosy.
What are we doing? Let's be honest. I can't totally blame him, but I'm also not the future king.
This is an issue where
William wanted to go to a football match.
Well, sure.
Yeah,
this is not new for him. And this is an issue where I know that we could have an actual debate about it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm correct on this, because it is nuanced. But I'm just saying, if William wants the credit for modernizing the monarchy and being a global statesman, this is the type of thing I would expect to see. So I'll just leave it there.
Leave it right there. So let's go into burying the lead, because this week we are starting a conversation that we've wanted to have for quite some time, which is about rival courts.
This is something we see classically when there are two very strong personalities in those roles of monarch and heir. I will get into a little bit of the history today, but we are going to examine how this idea of a united front versus rival courts is playing out with William and Charles. And this is something we've seen kind of danced around in the press quite a bit. Meredith, I know you are intrigued by the lack of lockstep between Charles and William. So there is some precedent there. But what are we seeing right now in the media in terms of, the monarch and his heir?
What we see play out in the media right now is we'll get a story about, how Prince William is going to do things. And then we'll sometimes see a story, usually from an American outlet like In Touch or something, a tabloid saying like father versus son. And then we'll get this, guys, they're so in lockstep against Prince Harry because it has to come back to that. And almost this reminder of, hey, guys.
That is when we see.
You're united. You're united and you have to be united against Harry. So we saw this in an article that you found from the Mirror. Prince William and King Charles show united front after Harry bombshell in rare joint outing. Number one, time. I love how we just tie all these things together as if it's a reaction to it and not just something that they had on the calendar.
Can I tell you what this event was? It was the 300th anniversary of the Order of the Bath, which is like one of the chivalric orders in the United Kingdom. Prince William was being installed as a great master of the order. It's kind of giving Masonic temple, if I'm being honest. But this is not something that will have been added to the calendar to one-up Prince Harry.
This was on the calendar. It's been like a couple hundred years. And the first thing I asked Amanda, because obviously Amanda definitely knows more about the ins and out of royalty and all the different orders and this and that. But I said, they're both wearing these elaborate robes. It kind of feels like they both had to be there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if Prince William is being moved up the ranks of this order and King Charles is at the head of the order, then yes, it's not really optional at that point whether you attend or show united front.
That's what's so weird to me, because they're not so much in lockstep as they had to both be there. So
doing
I guess
their
you could
job.
say they're a united front. What's also interesting, though, is that the king was accompanied by his younger page, Guy Tryon, who is the son of his godson, Lord Charles Tryon, and the grandson of the late Lady Dale Tryon. And we've talked about Charles and Dale's trysts. We had a discussion on that. That's Kanga. That's Kanga. And that was around the same time. Camilla and Dale both have children that have either the name Charles or Charles is somewhere in their name. Tom Parker Bowles has Charles at some point in his name.
And he's their godfather.
And he's the godfather. You got to keep it tight. So we had a try on there, which was interesting. I just wanted to,
that's fascinating. Yeah.
Point that out.
I also love the rundown of these events. When there's not a royal woman in attendance whose fashion we can talk about, we go to how did these two men interact? And here we have inside, the king greeted his son warmly with an affectionate pat on his shoulder before they enjoyed a brief, jovial conversation with the dean in the chapel of St. George. They then processed through the church, blah, 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 blah. It's just giving slow news week to me.
And also, how can we relate this to Harry and his interview with BBC without kind of churning that up too much? Because we got to move on.
Yeah, here we have the outing today comes just weeks after Prince Harry talked about his strained relationship with his father and brother in a bombshell interview with the BBC. The service for the Order of the Bath takes place every 4 years, with the monarch traditionally attending on only every other occasion and the Prince of Wales as Great Master attending every service.
So I'm just going to posit something right now. A year from now, we are going to be at a point where articles are saying it's been a year since Harry's bombshell interview with the BBC. And Charles and William are showing a united front somewhere else. But also what's really interesting about this is this idea that they're, this is united. They're in lockstep. It's a rare joint outing. And the joint outing is something that they have to do together.
It's an obligation.
It's not something where it's, they're just doing this together because the royal households are so in lockstep with each other.
Right.
And, are just working together, helping to highlight each other's causes.
Which we know is not the case. I really want to know, the last time I saw two royal houses do this, well, no. It was probably William and Sophie doing something with his African Parks conservation project. And then before that, it was Princess Anne and Kate going to a midwifery hospital together. Those events, when they happen, are so good for royal PR. And I really want to know how much work has to go into them behind the scenes that we don't see them happen more often. It's like every 2 years we get one of those true collaborative events.
Wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, we just can't get it together to coordinate between the royal houses.
The diaries are just packed. They're jam-packed, but this is something we've seen throughout history. And in what is now looking like a two-parter, we are going to talk about these rival courts and how what we're seeing with Prince William and King Charles is not new in many ways.
No.
It's not new. What's interesting, I think, particularly about Charles and William is this, we had the spare, right? Harry has left, right? And we know more from his point of view, Harry's, about what happened and the inner workings. And we know more about this weird press relationship, which one of the things I'm going to bring up in the future, probably next episode, is about how, unsurprisingly, none of the coverage about the kind of king William is going to be or how he has shaped things his way, none of it mentions the role the media has played in that and the way they have covered him. And that's something that I think is different from Charles, who obviously was rocked back in the day. They went, I mean, listen, he deserves some of it, but they went hard after him. So let's go into some of the history, though, the history of the rival courts. And that is where Miss Amanda Matta takes it away.
Because this is not a new phenomenon, the monarch and the heir potentially butting heads or being perceived as lacking a united front unless we have a common enemy. And I'm going to take it back today to the Georgian era.
So you're talking about Jonathan Groff, right?
Yes, that's the third. So yeah, we're talking, we begin in 1714. George I gets imported from Hanover, which is like a little German principality, because Queen Anne died that year with no surviving children. She had 17 either stillbirths or miscarriages. Tragic.
Oh, my God.
My heart weeps for Queen Anne every time I talk about her. But she had no surviving children. That meant that Parliament had to kind of scramble to find an heir. They passed over, talking about the Catholic Church, 50 potential heirs who had stronger claims than who we would eventually get to, George I, but they were disqualified because they were Catholic. So we settle on George of Hanover, who is Queen Anne's second cousin and a Protestant. That is the only thing qualifying for him for this job. He does not speak English. He arrives in Britain at the age of 54. He is described as gruff, shy, and boorish. He had a mistress named the Maypole because she was very tall and skinny. The Maypole, like a pole.
Yep. I feel that.
He left his wife back in Germany. He had divorced her for her being unfaithful, even though he had a mistress. So it's a mess. He's messy. He hates England. And this drama plays into his relationship with his son and heir as well. So the future George II, he remained loyal to his mother, Sophia Dorothea, who again is left back in Germany. When George arrives in Britain, he's given the title of Prince of Wales. He immediately becomes more popular than his father because, get this, he can speak English.
Listen, George I should have gotten on those Muzzy
Duolingo
videos. Yeah.
Right? Also, Duolingo's on my shit list right now because of their egregious AI policies, but that's another
done
topic.
With that. Yeah,
I'm deleting
sponsor
it.
us. I'm just kidding.
So George can speak English. He's been hitting the Duolingo. He has a streak. And 2 years after he lands, George I, his father, briefly returns to Germany and leaves George, his son, with the powers to govern in his absence. In this time, the Prince of Wales sees a huge popularity surge. He travels around Britain and allows the general public to interact with him. Groundbreaking. There's also an assassination attempt at a theater, and that just makes him even more popular. And his father, when he returns, is not happy. There's a lot of resentment between father and son already. My research assistant, Allison, shout out to Allison for forming the backbone of this research today. She wrote in my outline here, they loathed each other with impressive intensity.
Allison.
I love she can turn a phrase. So there was this specific event. It was the christening of the Prince of Wales' baby son, where the personal animosity exploded. George apparently shook his fist in his father's face, which you can't do. You're not allowed to do that.
I need to tell you something really important.
Please.
This happened on The Real Housewives of New Jersey.
At a christening?
At a christening.
Oh my God.
At a party where Joe Gorga goes to his father and says, "You're my father! You're my father!" Because Teresa, they're causing all sorts of issues at little Joey's christening.
So picture that, but in England.
So picture Joe Gorga shaking in a powdered wig, shaking his fist at his cute little old grandfather that would cook like octopus at like 6 a.m.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This was
Does
just
art imitate life, or does life
I
imitate
realize that
art?
I've seen this play out in the
I think
in
I've
the
seen
very
this
religious
film before.
Real
Yes.
Housewives of New Jersey. So go on. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, that's great color for this episode. But that's exactly what happened. The king then banished the Prince of Wales from court and even took custody of his young grandchildren. He permitted only one weekly visit with the parents after that. So Prince George and his wife, Caroline of Ansbach, established what was called a rival court at their own residence of Leicester House. They created a social split in London society. There would be like parties on the same night, and you would have to choose where you got to attend the one with the king.
This is Real Housewives.
Yeah. Yep. So basically, we get two factions, the king's supporters and the Prince of Wales supporters. So Leicester House becomes this rival court and a focus, notably, for dissident political groups. The Whigs included future Prime Minister Robert Walpole, who started to frequent this rival court with the Prince of Wales. In 1720, Walpole called publicly for a reconciliation between the father and the son, but this was kind of understood to just be for public approval and to kind of smooth things over in the media and the public, because behind closed doors, the Prince of Wales was still not able to become regent when the king was out of the country, and his 3 children were not released from the king's care. This does come back to bite George I, however, and ultimately raises George II's popularity because he supported Robert Walpole in these early years. Walpole became crucial when the monarchy's legitimacy was threatened by both Tory politicians and by the exiled Stuarts. So the Stuart uprisings are happening at this time. If you've seen Outlander, Bonnie Prince Charlie comes into play in a couple years. So there are these people who think there's a pretender to the throne who has a better claim because they didn't have to pass over 50 other potential heirs to get to them, right?
The points were made.
But they're Catholic, so, you know. So Walpole intervenes when this becomes a huge issue, and he makes it so there are no real political threats to the monarchy when the Jacobite rebellions kick off, namely the last big one, the 45. So George II, when he comes to the throne in 1727, he, I want to say, changed it up, learned from the past. He does not. His first act of king is to refuse to attend his father George I's funeral, which was back in Hanover.
That's cold.
Yeah. And that actually made him more popular in Britain because it showed he was loyal to England, not Germany. So we're keeping this feud up for the next generation. Now, George II had mistresses, but his wife, Caroline, tolerated them. She probably learned lessons from the previous generation, even if her husband did not. George II also developed a, quote, explosive hatred for his own eldest son, Frederick, Prince of Wales. So Frederick had been left behind in Hanover when George came over as Prince of Wales himself, and as a result did not see his father or his mother for 14 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So picture that. His father becomes king. Frederick's been left behind for 14 years, and all of a sudden now he is Prince of Wales. He is making the trek over to England, much like his father did. And when he lands in England, he's going to do things differently. He is determined to be, quote, as troublesome as possible.
Listen, we love a chaotic king.
Yeah. So rather than trying to raise his own profile, make himself more popular, he kind of tries to antagonize the king. He deliberately does everything his father hates, including staging popular public entertainments and cultivating opposition politicians. So it's kind of just playing out all over again for the second generation.
Nothing is new.
No, nothing is new. So Frederick marries another German princess, Augusta of Saxe-Gotha. She goes into labor at Hampton Court Palace, and Frederick makes her get into a carriage in the middle of the night and go to St. James's Palace because there his parents would not be able to attend the birth. By the time they got word, it would be too late.
Okay, listen. Nope.
It's a lot. It's a lot. George II, when he hears about this, again, learning nothing from the past, banishes his son from court. So Frederick says, okay, bet I will form my own court. And once again, At the Prince of Wales' residence at Leicester House, we have a rival court.
No more Leicester. They got to just get rid of Leicester Court. It's not working over there.
No. So I just love the parallels. Frederick, his faction, once again, is catering to the politicians who are kind of on the outs. Their party's not in power. This time it is the Whigs. So the Whig administration, as well as Tories who are unhappy with the king's policy, they flock to Frederick's court. They're often called the Patriot Whigs. This includes people who are now dissatisfied with Prime Minister Robert Walpole. This faction does meet at Leicester House to discuss their political agenda. We have the rise of young politicians like William Pitt and George Grenville because of this faction. The Patriot Whigs are considered one of the factors ultimately leading to Robert Walpole resigning as prime minister in 1742. Frederick openly campaigned in the British general election in 1741.
Well, that's a no-no.
It's a big no-no. Yeah. Walpole tried and failed to buy off the prince, apparently, leading to him losing political stability. People just didn't want to back that horse anymore now that he does not have the support of the next Prince of Wales. It also doesn't help that in 1739, England got involved in a few different conflicts around Europe. The War of Austrian Succession is one. I think there was also a war in Spain. George II, he is really interested in going to war. He had a military background, but the government and Walpole were not. So it seems like Frederick kind of was a wedge in between and just made things worse for both sides. Relations between the king and the Prince of Wales were never reconciled. When Frederick died, because you've never heard of a King Frederick before, it's George 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
So Frederick dies unexpectedly at the age of 44, leading King George II, his father, to say, "I lost my eldest son, but am glad of it." That's also very cold.
Wow.
So it's Frederick's eldest son, George, who becomes the heir and is made Prince of Wales 3 weeks after the death of his father. When George II died in 1760, he became King George III at age 22. He marries Princess Charlotte, becomes Queen Charlotte, and they have a very long and loving marriage despite King George III's mental illness, horrific treatment that he received, straitjackets, ice baths, isolation. So he had a lot on his plate and didn't really have time to entertain.
Dang colonies.
Those dang colonies rebelling. I mean, come on. He had enough to deal with. But thankfully, the rival court thing was not one of his issues. George III would be more concerned with producing any legitimate heir after George IV, the Prince Regent. So that's how we get Queen Victoria. But yeah, the Georgian rival courts, I think it's just a very interesting period of time that we do sort of see echoes of in the modern era, or at least the potential for.
Yeah. No, definitely the potential. And I'm even thinking of how George V, Queen Elizabeth's grandfather. I just think about that. He said something along the lines of Edward won't last a year on the throne or something like that. And people were wouldn't have been unhappy if something had happened, especially with Edward's love of horse racing and stuff. If a broken neck wouldn't have been good for the future of the monarchy. So
listen, we're not saying, we're just saying.
So we're just saying, sometimes the bloodline, maybe this whole first in line thing is not the best way to go.
System. No. I did ask Omid Scobie about this back in 2023 when Endgame came out. I interviewed him for The Fascinator on Substack. You can go read that. I'll try and link it in the description. But he had some interesting things to say when I asked him about this rival court phenomenon. And he said, "The story of royal fathers and sons at loggerheads is as Shakespearean as it comes and has been long chronicled in royal history." He said, "I think in this era, God bless Omid, he's trying to make the Carolean era a thing. I don't think it's going to be a thing. It doesn't roll off the tongue. He's trying. He said, "I think in this era, we have to assess Charles not only as a constitutional monarch, but as a family figurehead, as the leader of the House of Windsor." And Omid said, "He's always felt that Charles' inability to convene and command his own family speaks to a much larger issue of him as head of state. I think what we're seeing happen between William and Charles today may be a much bigger problem in the future." He talks a little bit about how Charles took the throne as a much less popular monarch than Queen Elizabeth II. Omid said the Queen was more popular than the institution itself, and Charles could benefit maybe from some of that popularity, either that his mother or now his son, Prince William, and of course Kate plays into the equation too, continue to enjoy. Instead, we've seen an almost intentional distancing between the two, where the Wales agenda has been very much siloed away from King Charles' own work. We have not seen father and son side by side on engagements. We have also not seen a huge amount in terms of a show of support for Charles on the throne from the heir. In fact, not only have we seen Prince William chomping at the bit for his turn, which is fine by itself, we also see him stepping on the heels of his father very early on in what could still be a 15 to 20 year reign.
That's what always gets me about William is, oh my gosh, your father barely got the scepter in his hands, and there were articles already talking about how
your 10-point plan. Do you remember the 10-point plan? The 10-point plan, 5-step plan. I don't know.
All the plans, and basically viewing Charles as this transitional figure, which I don't know. If I'm Charles, I'm like, listen,
offended as hell.
I have been waiting decades for this. Let me have my time. I always find that interesting, especially when we're talking about decorum and royal protocol. And so this isn't, I'm not sure this is how you do it, but also we will see, and we will talk about in the future how Charles also tried to do this to his mother when she was getting up in age and when he was chomping at the bit himself to establish himself more.
They talked about that a lot in The Crown, if I'm remembering correctly.
They do talk, yeah, Project 70, which is something we'll discuss, does come up as a way of Charles kind of moving forward and taking on more responsibility from his aging mother, which gets into private secretaries being ousted, which is a very fun story that we will get into in part 2.
I love a 2-parter. I'm so excited for that. So make sure you tune in next week. Before we go, though, I believe we have an obituary.
We got a couple of things going on here.
Now, today, as we are recording, is Harry and Meghan's 7th wedding anniversary.
It's on the 19th?
She posted today.
I thought they got married on the 18th. Hold on.
She posted today.
When did Harry and... You're probably right. Yeah, May 19th. Listen, I was wrong. I love how I'm like, she doesn't know her own anniversary. I kind of thought it was the 18th too. And I was like, why isn't she posting it? It was today. So she posted a little mood board with pictures of her and Harry over the years. I'm sure the sleuths are loving this right now. There's lots to zoom in on. I love her caption. It's 7 years of marriage, a lifetime of stories. Thanks to all of you, whether by our side or from afar, who have loved and supported us throughout our love story. We appreciate you. Happy anniversary. It's almost not a statement to Harry, but rather to the public, which I think is cute. Very, yeah. And then the song is the 500 miles.
Cute. That's cute.
Which is cute.
But Meredith,
yeah, this is really cute.
I believe you had an obituary kind of in the same vein of talking about royal couples, royal relationships. What are we burying today?
Okay.
In the obituary section.
This is just a me thing. And this is no shade to Harry and Meghan at all. But one thing I noticed was, especially with their recent slew of concerts, especially the Beyonce one, which looked fantastic.
It looked steamy in more ways than one. I was sweaty just looking at those pictures.
It was very overheated. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about what top I would have worn to really air out because like
linen, cotton.
Yep, gauzy. And Harry's posing. He's got his hat on, and they're looking so cute. Here's what I would love to have die. The posts and the tweets that are like, yeah, you can tell they're getting it on, or yeah, you can tell Harry looks good because he's been carrying Meghan around all those bedrooms and trying everything out. This is weird. I don't like projecting about how much people are fucking. I think it's weird. I think it's a weird thing to go to their sex life.
To be clear, we're not saying, right, Meredith, that we can't be supportive. We don't hate love over here.
I am pro-sex, okay? I hope that they are getting it in, but I'm not. Sorry, I just pounded my fist.
I hope we can pick that up on the mic, yeah.
Probably. There, I just added the Foley with my, right there.
Thank you.
I hope that for them. I love that for them. I love, okay? I don't want to hear people projecting about if their love tank is being filled up, and
it's icky.
It's really icky. Yeah, she's got that glow because he's banging her. It's just, stop it.
It's
there are ways to do this,
like when
that aren't gross.
No, I agree with you. whenever Rihanna steps out and reveals another pregnancy, it's the same kind of thing as like, ASAP, get off of her. I'm like, let them do what they're going to do.
Stop it.
Know.
Maybe they want children close together in age, and she's, in her, I think she's 37. And
she's in her mom era.
Yeah, she's in her mom era. I just think the comfort, we're too comfortable.
The familiarity, yeah.
We're too comfortable with what we, again, don't know about this couple. Like, we don't know how much they're having sex, and I don't want to know. I just want them to have a healthy marriage and relationship, whatever that looks like, right?
That can look different for many people.
Different, but it's really weird the way anytime we see them look happy, it's like, they're getting it in, or like, oh yeah, his arms are tight from lifting her. Guys, please
let's be normal, please.
Please stop. We're not in these people's bedrooms.
And I feel the same way about the slightest bit of eye contact between Will and Kate being interpreted as bedroom eyes, or
the playful butt tap.
The butt tap.
Like it's foreplay. That's
or like
weird.
He'll put his hand on her back and there will be people saying, oh, he's so protective. And it's just like, I think they're just like in a public place and need to be perceived as a unit, guys.
Yeah. And maybe he's like helping to kind of guide where she is. And the butt tap, though, and that spark's still alive. Stop it.
It's weird. I feel weird about it.
Let's stop talking about people's sex life or imagining what it might be. Can we just enjoy a photo where two people look united and in love and enjoying themselves? Can we not talk about why his arms are so buff because he's doing kinky stuff with Megan? Stop it.
That was graphic.
He wants to talk about it. She can get into one of the rocking chairs with Jamie
Kern Lima.
And they can discuss how it was the soul contract, okay?
I gave that podcast 3 stars when Spotify kept recommending it to me. I was like, nope, I'm going to give it 3. So
you know what? That was fair.
You stopped serving it. It's just not my style, sorry.
Which is okay.
Well, that was cathartic.
I'm glad we got that off our chest because that has really been grinding my gears.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Meredith. I wholeheartedly agree with you. If you don't agree with us, leave a comment. Don't put that in a review.
Just be nice, guys. They're kink shaming. No, we're not.
We're just we maybe we're from another generation where we weren't chronically online with like our first like real relationship. I don't know.
That's very true. That's very true. That's a whole nother topic. But this has been an off the frickin' rails episode, which I am always here for. This is when we record on Monday. You never know. It's our normal day, but we get funky. But before we leave, we do want to thank our press secretaries for not metaphorically, playfully slapping our butts and just having a real loving relationship professionally. Wow, that didn't really work, but I'm trying.
Thank you, Molly and Nikki.
Thanks, guys. And if you would like to join our shout out tier, it's over there on Patreon along with our ad-free episodes. Don't exile your eldest child. That's all I'm asking.
That's the lesson this week. Thanks for listening.
Don't exile. Get therapy. Don't exile children. Save the next generation. Anyway, that is all for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.